On behalf of the Conrad and French families, I would like to welcome each of you to this celebration of the life of Warren Conrad. The family would like to thank each of you for making the effort to be here to support them during this time of loss and reflection. I knew Warren while I was growing up here in Nevada County and in this church as the father of Daryl and Cheryl, the husband of Dorothy, and the owner of 2 Radio Shacks. If asked, I would have described him as quiet and kind, an easy smile, and a ready laugh. In 1997, I moved my family home to Grass Valley and in 2002 built a house on property. I became reacquainted with Warren as we worked together on many projects. These were not easy projects, but Warren was always up for the challenge, and I learned so much about him during these many hours together. Fearless. Warren painted the barge rafters on my house with a rickety extension ladder set up in the back of his pickup truck while talking, reaching, laughing, and leaning at 36 feet off the ground. Formidable. Warren and I placed 2.5 tons of dry stack block together. No resting, complaining, or time off to recover. And fair. Warren and I were installing fencing around the perimeter of 3.5 acres. An aggressive, angry neighbor with CCNRs in hand confronted us and demanded we stop the installation. Warren could not be restrained, and I remember he said over and over, "That's not fair, that's not fair. Hey, that's not fair." I could not make him stop, but it wasn't fair. And so get ready and hang on as we celebrate the remarkable life of Warren. If you'd bow your heads with me. Dear Father in heaven, we claim the promise that where 2 or 3 are gathered together, that you will be there. We invite you into this place and into our hearts. And we claim the promise that soon, and very soon, we will be reunited in a place of wonder that we can't even imagine. So give us strength with that hope. Amen.
The headline read, "Nebraska and the Great Plains became the Dust Bowl." This is what the Hastings Daily Tribune printed on Saturday, March 16, 1935. Almost a year later, Warren Lester Conrad was born in Litchfield, Sherman County, Nebraska, on January 30, 1936, to Ruth Alvina Bowe and Ray Leonard Conrad. The family found themselves in the middle of this Nebraska Dust Bowl. When Warren was 1 month old and his brother Darrell was 3 years old, the family decided to move to Bakersfield, California. His father worked for the Works Progress Administration. The WPA was focused on projects involving infrastructure, public buildings, and aid for migrants. Then in 1941, his father moved the family to Escondido, where he became a carpenter specializing in building greenhouses. Besides his older brother Darrell, Warren had 2 younger sisters, Jacqueline, who was known as Jackie, who was 3 years younger, and Ravola, who was 6 years younger than him. Warren and Darrell spent their childhood years having fun building contraptions and playing with their dog, Snippy. Darrell helped Warren cultivate his interests in electronics and inventing. Some of these were building crystal radio sets and working with ham radios. There were comical inventions like launching chickens off of the rooftop with attached parachutes, building a giant slingshot on the top of the garage made from strips of inner tube rubber from old tires, and using it to launch tin cans into the neighbor's yard across the street. Warren was known for his antics with his sisters as well. One night, Jackie discovered Warren crawling under her bed. She called out to him, "Hey, what are you doing down there?" "I've lost him somewhere." "Lost who?" "My pet tarantula." Warren started doing chores around his family's home and yard and made 25 cents allowance per week. This financed his radio parts and his going to the movies. It was 10 cents for the movie, 5 cents each for popcorn and a drink, and he still had 5 cents left over. What a treat. Later, he had a paper route and he made a lot more cash. It was hard work, though. He folded the papers into triangles because they flew better when he threw them onto the people's porches. He also had to collect subscription money from the subscribers. When Warren was 13 years old, his older brother Darrell had a tragic accident on his motor scooter. Sadly, Darrell passed away at the age of 16. This impacted the family very hard. Warren attended high school at Escondido High. Part-time after school, he worked at the Sears store in Escondido. While there, he started as a stock clerk and soon advanced to the automotive shop, changing tires and oil. He graduated from Escondido High in the class of 1953. He then picked up several odd jobs and later worked in a warehouse and ran a forklift. His next job was working at a TV shop where he installed picture tubes in TVs, did radio repairs, and TV antenna installations. He also sharpened and repaired lawnmowers on the side. Warren volunteered for the draft in the U.S. Army. In November 1954, he was called up and served for 2 years. The Army sent him to Southeastern Signal School, where he trained for 6 months for field radio repair at Fort Gordon, Georgia. Then he was transferred to Fort Huachuca, Arizona. There he ran a truck-mounted field radio relay station, installed field broadcasting antennas, and maintained radio relay carrier equipment. It's a mouthful. He learned the testing of field radar at Fort Huachuca Electron Proving Grounds. Warren was honorably discharged from the Army in September 1956 and went to work for Roy's Radio and TV in Escondido. He was training on the job, repairing radios, record players, and car radios, as well as some TV repair. He helped with custom hi-fi and speaker installations for high school auditoriums and local skating rinks. Warren was sent out to one of these outdoor roller skating rinks. He conveniently had his roller skates with him since he used them often. He put on his skates and made his way around the perimeter of the rink, checking the balance of each speaker around the rink. He hadn't realized that someone was watching him. She had seen him come in the front door. What a nice-looking guy, she thought. Warren was checking the speakers. He had passed her by and politely said hello and continued with his job. Soon it was the last part of the skating session and time for couples skate. He found out her name was Dorothy, and he asked her to skate. Of course, she accepted. The next week, Warren was at the skating rink again. This time, he spent less time on the speaker job and more time with Dorothy. Now he and Dorothy Cleveland were on their way to getting acquainted. The next date, he asked her, "Would you like to go to the ocean and see the sea anemones?" It was a strange request, but Dorothy was on board with it, really wanting to ride in his '57 Chevy. At the ocean, Dorothy waded in the water. She didn't see a large wave was coming into the shore. It had such force, it knocked her down to the sand and got her all wet. Warren gracefully helped her up. And then he stood back, looked at her, and roared with laughter. She was thrilled when he let her drive the Chevy back to Escondido from the beach. Their relationship grew. They would go to the drive-in occasionally. He introduced Dorothy to his parents and sisters, and they would take drives together. It was 1959. Dorothy moved away from her parents and into her own apartment. At the time, Dorothy was working as a bookkeeper for the Soil Conservation Service in Escondido. Warren was working at a TV shop called Lynn's TV. As their relationship matured, Dorothy took Warren home to meet her parents and her siblings. She felt she wanted to move to get away from the city life. If Warren was really serious about their relationship, she hoped he would follow. She decided to request a transfer with the Soil Conservation Service. A position in Placerville, California office was available. She applied for it and was offered the job. Warren had a big interest in gold and in Dorothy. Moving to the gold country in Placerville really appealed to him now. He soon followed the love of his life, Dorothy, there. 3 years later, after Dorothy was convinced that Warren was truly the right one, they were married on November 4, 1962, in the Camino Seventh-day Adventist Church. After the wedding, Warren and Dorothy had quite an eventful honeymoon. Dorothy contracted a mild case of polio from recently taking the vaccine. Warren was having electrical problems with the car, now their car, and had to change burnt ignition points every few miles at service stations and sometimes under streetlights. After the move to Placerville, Warren worked for a stonemason, building fireplaces for 6 months. Then he was hired by Davies Home and Auto Firestone store. He did outside TV service calls and bench TV repair. Finally, he went off starting his own TV repair shop and called it a very original name, Warren's TV Repair Shop. He sold and repaired Zenith TVs and stereos. In 1964, Warren and Dorothy had their first child, who they named Darrell, after Warren's brother who had passed away. Warren was a proud father. Soon after Darrell was born, Warren sold his TV repair shop and moved to Grass Valley. In 1967, he became a father again to a baby girl, Cheryl. At this time, Warren worked for Millscraft TV and then Greniva Appliances and TV. He worked for Greniva for 4 years. He did most of the outside TV calls and TV antenna installations. Warren's dream was to have his own business again. He was energized when he noticed a TV business going out of a long-established location on Neal Street in Grass Valley. He was successful in acquiring the location, and on February 28, 1969, he opened a radio TV repair shop. He named his shop Advance TV. 4 years later, he was approached by a new company called Radio Shack to sell their products and become a dealer franchise. In 1972, Warren opened his tiny Radio Shack store in his TV repair shop. His store was a small 25 by 25 foot building. When large shipments arrived, customers would have to line up at the door since there would only be a trail through the store around the boxes. Warren's business became successful because he was conscientious and helpful to every customer that entered the store. He would take time to give them electronic advice on their devices. Customers also came to see him with their TV and radio repairs. Within 6 years, the little Radio Shack store was tops in sales and growth out of 5 western states. As the store took on additional lines of inventory besides Radio Shack products, it had way outgrown the space. There was also internal pressure with the threat of competition from the company. Warren decided to expand the business and found a larger space that took up 2 whole storefronts in Glenbrook Plaza off of Brunswick Road in Grass Valley. The new store was almost 4 times the size of the original small store, and he was able to have room for fixtures and display cases that could properly display merchandise. 5 years later, with the town of Grass Valley growing and with the threat of additional competition coming around again, Warren couldn't resist the urge to expand again. This time at the opposite end of town. He opened a second location near the Kmart on West McKnight Way. He then hired a management team to work at both locations, and he took more of a supervisory role, although he still enjoyed working with his customers. Warren had a lot of interests that kept him very busy through the years outside of the business. His interest in gold and treasure hunting is what brought him to the gold country from his roots in Southern California. He first worked panning material from the crevices in the streams where the pioneer miners had once been. Quite often his son Darrell was along for the experience, and he had him cleaning out the crevices. Warren experimented with building his own sluice box and later a dredge, in which he was able to process a lot more material. Customers would occasionally come into Warren's store and want to pay for merchandise with their small sacks of gold. He would make his way to the gold assayer's office to weigh and reference the current market price. Once Warren was approached by a customer freely offering him to work his family's 9 gold claims along the river for a whole year. Of course, Warren eagerly accepted the offer. Warren's interest in treasure hunting merged with selling metal locators and accessories in the business. On the weekends and in his spare time, he would work the local rivers and streams. With the sophistication of very sensitive locators, he would use his headphones and exclaim, quote, "I can hear the nuggets crying out to me." He would also help people find lost items like a missing jewelry piece. Even on vacation, he would take an underwater locator with him. Once on the beach in the Cayman Islands, he was into the first 5 minutes of locating search on the beach when he made a huge discovery, a white gold ring. Of course, he then thought the beach was full of them. After spending several hours, he came away with only the first one he found. Warren had big interests in restoring classic cars, especially Model A Fords, along with restoring antique radios. His goal, as always, was to return the antique back to its former original beauty. He discovered ways that he was able to use his 29 Model A pickup to do volunteer work for the church and for the community. Through Warren's business, he truly experienced the rise of all types of technology in society, from the analog to the digital age. There came a time in the mid-90s when, in his words, quote, "There were no new hula hoops coming. meaning that there was nothing that he could envision in the future of technology that was revolutionarily new that the public would be excited to buy. He had, quote, ridden the bubble long enough in retail electronics. In September 1996, he decided to sell the business and retire. After the sale, he only managed to semi-retire. He started up another small business as an independent contractor for a satellite dish company, Primestar. He enjoyed installing satellite dishes as it brought back memories of installing TV antennas. In this business, he could take on as much as he wanted, and his time was flexible. Warren and Dorothy bought a home in Alta Sierra on the edge of a canyon overlooking the Lake of the Pines community. Warren now had a place to properly garage his '29 Ford Model A, his Bounder motorhome, and his radio collection. In the 2010s, as Warren finally progressed into full retirement, he enjoyed spending time with his grandchildren, feeding the birds, and watching the local wildlife. He had a passion for keeping his concrete driveway cleared of debris with his leaf blower. Warren looked forward to each weekend to his time going to church, even if it meant taking a walker or wheelchair. The congregation were so gracious with helping him to and from the car and the fellowship hall. As Warren's health issues worsened, he was able less and less to physically attend church. However, he was faithful about tuning into the YouTube channel. Warren passed away on December 19, 2025. He is survived by his wife, Dorothy, their 2 children, Daryl and Cheryl, and their families, including 5 grandchildren. His sisters, Rivola and Jackie, and her family. Thank you all today for joining us to celebrate Warren's life.
I am going to be reading scriptures from the Bible that truly reflect what my grandpa was like and how he served people in the community, and he was kind and he was a witness to others in business and his community and even in his church. And so these are the verses. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. I feel like he let his light shine, and I feel like people could see that, and they could see where his heart was at. And now I will read the next verse. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ. I feel like he carried many people's burdens throughout his life and sacrificed a lot as a father, as a husband, as a business partner, and I miss him. Oh, by the way, I'm his granddaughter, so thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jordan. I first knew Josh French. He was a senior when I taught at Pine Hills Academy, our church school down the road. And I loved Josh, ever thoughtful, and I realized he had a younger sister, Carissa. She was in the junior high at the time. And I realized that both of these people were very special kids, and then I realized where they came from, mother and father, Tim and Cheryl. And I wish I knew Warren. Seemed like a great guy. Tim sent me a document of a song that he wrote about a month or so ago, and he said, "This is for my father-in-law. I wrote these words, and let me know what you think. I want you to sing them for this memorial." And for the next month or so, I kept having in my mind this song. I think it's a very beautiful song. It instantly caught in my head. And I got to learn who Warren was through the words of this song. All these words and the music as well, again, was written by Tim, Warren's son-in-law. I hope it's a blessing to you to not only see and remember who Warren was as you knew him, maybe even learn something new, and most importantly, see the image of God that he so well portrayed. So this is Tim's song in honor of Warren, called "Faithful Friend." Rain is gently falling down. The night is still and dark. A good man lays in silence, now asleep in the Lord. Faithful to his family, faithful to his church. The world was a much better place while he was here on earth. With hard-working hands and a heart, he took life as it came. He always looked on the bright side, never ever complained. He was always ready to lend a hand to everyone in need. Always thinking of others, he lived unselfishly. He was a faithful friend, faithful husband and father to the end. Now he's gone but not forgotten. I know we'll see him again. He was a faithful friend. Ooh. He always had a joke to tell, or a story to pass the time, full of fun and adventure, ever a laugh or a smile. He was always wanting to make new friends and chat just for a while. Through selfless acts of service, he'd walk the extra mile. He was a faithful friend, faithful husband and Father to the end. He's gone but not forgotten. I know we'll see him again. He was a faithful friend. Ooh, faithful friend. One day soon the Lord will come and call out his name. He will rise in glory, forever changed. Oh, grave, where is your victory? Oh, death, where is your sting? For this mortal soul will rise again at the coming of the King, at the coming of the King. He will be with the Lord through eternity, at peace in paradise. There'll be no more pain or suffering. God will wipe away all tears from our eyes. So until that day, we must wait, trusting in the Lord. And someday we will meet again on that faithful shore, faithful friend. Ooh, faithful husband and father to the end. He's gone but not forgotten. No, we'll see him again. Faithful friend. Ooh, faithful friend. He's gone but not forgotten. I know we'll see him again. Ooh.
Hey, Doc. When I heard those words, hey, Doc, it had to be my friend Warren Conrad calling. For I don't remember in all my professional career ever being addressed that way by anyone else. That call was always with a warmth I liked and appreciated it. Dorothy told me that Warren was of the Lutheran faith. Since all of my family came from the Lutherans, I'm kind of partial to them. When she first met him, and they both lived in the Escondido area of Southern California. They loved the ocean and spent time at its beaches. Dorothy came from a strong SDA church family, and it wasn't long until Warren also embraced the honoring of the Sabbath. They married, moved to the Grass Olive area, It was about the same time that the Higley family moved to Nevada County. That was 1965. Darrell and Cheryl, their son and daughter, made them a family. And it was only complete when Darrell married Donette Howlins and Cheryl married Tim French. And the grandchildren of Warren and Dorothy, Caitlin, Alessa, Philip, Carissa, and Joshua, as their beloved family. Here are some memories that their son Darrell shared with me as he recalled early life with his father. Darrell remembers his dad loving old cars and trucks, especially Ford Model A's. Warren acquired one of those Fords with Dorothy's approval, and Darrell tells this story. A woman asked Warren for a ride for both her husband and her son in that old Ford. So Warren got an idea and said to them, "I'll take you to Sabbath school, which is like your Sunday school, then to church, then to lunch, and then I'll take you home. Is that okay?" "Yes," they replied. "We would very much like that." That eventually became a problem for Warren, for he had 12 people who wanted to take that ride and go to church services. Darrell tells us that the name Conrad means a spoked wheel. How fitting to witness your faith with spoked wheels. Warren helped in Pathfinders, both in their outings and campouts. He taught honors in electronics and also taught both the primary and the juniors in Sabbath school. Warren loved very much going to church, and even though in his last years he needed a walker and sometimes a wheelchair. Darrell worked with his father in the field of electronics, and that took him to a career in the electronic field, and that is what he continues to do today. Darrell recalls how much his father loved their family. Cheryl, their daughter and dad's girl, has wonderful memories of her father. He read many Bible stories to her, taught her to pray. Dorothy remembers Warren always praying for their children in their evening worship, even after the children had left home. Cheryl recalls her dad loving to go to church, enjoying nature walks, identifying flowers and plants, and how much he enjoyed nature with his grandchildren. Both Chris and Joshua, grandchildren, learned to love nature with him. Cheryl remembers her dad as being kind, willing to help others, and always willing to help her. She states that her father was able to take a challenging situation and turn it into a positive one. The family, Dorothy, Darrell, and Cheryl, have so many memories it would require several hours just to list them. A little history of Warren and Dorothy and their business life here in Grass Valley. They bought a TV repair business on Neal Street. It's right across from the downtown Safeway. When they purchased that TV repair business, the seller was concerned because they planned to close the business on Saturdays. That was the owner's best business day of the week. And he thought, what will happen to my TV business? He even wondered if they would make it with that restriction. However, they did very well with God's blessing. I clearly remember one day going into his business on Neal Street and being greeted by Warren with his, "Hey, Doc." He asked if I would give him counsel. Since I knew little to nothing about electronics, I wondered what area of advice he might be seeking. And he questioned what my thoughts would be about him taking on a franchise with Radio Shack. Now that company, Radio Shack, was a national electronic business. Company became a multi-billion-dollar enterprise here in the United States. I remember encouraging Warren and Dorothy to do so, and they opened a store in the Glenbrook Plaza. Since they honored God and his Sabbaths, I was certain that God would bless them with their new business. And that business flourished. Even a second store was opened in the McKnight Center south of town. Later, Warren told me this story about his business. A customer in faraway New York City ordered an item. So Warren carefully packed it up and sent that product to the East Coast, to New York City. Sometime later, he got a letter from this customer thanking him for the product and adding something else in that letter. He thanked Warren that his Radio Shack store was closed on Saturdays. For a little while that puzzled Warren. Then he put two and two together and he figured out how this customer learned of his Sabbath keeping. Warren had carefully packed that product with newspaper and he used the local paper, the Union. And in that paper was an advertisement for Dorothy and Warren's business, the Radio Shack store. And the ad declared the business to be closed on Saturdays. Maybe, just maybe, that might be called literature evangelism, friends, and that was done using the local newspaper. Dorothy created the program for today's memorial service, and she has this part of the program listed as Message of Hope. Nothing could make for a better label, a better title for this memorial service of a loved one than that title, Message of Hope. The word hope is commonly connected with chance, wishful thinking, optimistic state of mind, expectation for a positive outcome. None of those understandings, though, can compare to the hope that you and I have in being believers and followers of the Almighty. Here are some biblical understandings of the word hope. A certainty of what we do not see. Certainty of what we do not see. A sure and steadfast anchor of the soul. A solid relationship with God. And there are many others. In the book of 1 Corinthians, hope is listed with two other powerful forces, faith and love. Those precious three, faith, hope, and love, are very secure companions. The book of Revelation tells us of a future home where the righteous, when resurrected, will live. But a word is missing from that description of that holy heavenly place. That word is death. Warren had faith in such a place and believed that when life ended and Christ returned, he and others would enter those pearly gates. Warren Conrad's love for gems and minerals will probably cause him to look for and identify all those precious stones that we found as part of that New Jerusalem city. Revelation chapter 7 in our Bibles tells of a special group called the 144,000, 12,000 to be taken from each tribe of Israel. And they are sealed by God. To be sealed is to be made secure, irreversible, tamper-proof, and only God can do that. It also adds in that 7th chapter another group to that special number. And this group is called a great multitude which no man can number. This group is composed of all nations, kindreds, people, and tongues, who one day will stand before God's throne and before the Lamb. That's very, very important to note. A multitude which no man can number. Today, family and friends, pledge with me to be in that group where the word death will no longer be heard, no longer needed. Rather, it will be replaced with eternal life. Just think, living forever. There will be no funerals in heaven. I will not at all be surprised to once again hear those words being called out in heaven, "Hey, Doc!" And they'll be coming from my friend and family, from your loved one. Warren Conrad, husband, father, grandfather, and friend. The Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord make his face shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. The Lord lift up his countenance upon thee and give thee peace. God, bless the memory of Warren Conrad's life. And now, let him sleep in Jesus.
anybody would like to share a brief memory of Warren, just raise your hand and we'll bring you a microphone and you can share your experiences with this wonderful man.
Well, while I have the mic, I do have a very short memory. I didn't know at first that it was with Warren, but I had a co-worker in medicine with the Forest Service who liked to tinker with electronics. And he was sharing with me about this project he was doing, and he would get this stuff from Radio Shack. But he said, the only thing I don't appreciate is that he closes on Saturday. And I said, well, that man is a man of good faith. He's the Seventh-day Adventist. I had just heard not too long before that at a Seventh-day Adventist own Radio Shack. And so I didn't go on too much with him, but inside I was going, yeah, there you go.
Well, we had Warren come over when he was doing the Glory Star and put it in our house. And there was a problem with the signal. And we had this big, huge oak tree. And he said, oh, that limb is in the way. Oh, I'll just climb out there and cut it off. And how far up high was it?
It was almost 60 feet off the ground.
Yeah. Oh, I'll just climb up there and cut that off, and then we'll have a good signal. So that was Warren. Nothing stopped him. And he was always so much fun. We just loved him.
She took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say the same story, but he was quite a character. He's either very brave.
And I have a story to share about Warren, and of course it's based upon his Radio Shack business. When I was a lot younger man than what I am now, I had a knack for installing stereos in my friends' vehicles. I was the only person that knew how to do that. And a lot of times I would do it on Saturday. Well, it usually meant that I needed parts and stuff like that, and I would tell my friends, well, no sweat, I'll have that put in an hour. All I need to do is go down to Radio Shack and pick the parts up. Well, I'd drive up there, and it would be closed again. I don't know how many times that I drove down there on Saturday, and it was years later that I came to the church and was baptized, and he was one of the first people that I recognized, and then it made sense. Warren, you're a Seventh-day Adventist.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kim McLean, and Warren is my uncle. I have a couple of stories to share. This is really hard for me to get up in front of people, but to me, the stories are worth sharing because of how special he was to me. I got this story, learned this story from my mother. She told us about it. When Warren was young, he saw a frog on the ground, and the frog had a broken leg, and he felt so bad for this frog that he grabbed like 2 popsicle sticks, or maybe there were sticks from the yard, I'm not sure, and some tape, and he taped the frog's leg up. I don't know how many months later, but this frog came hopping out from underneath their house, and he took one look at it, and there was that frog. He totally healed up. Now, one might ask, well, how do you know it was the same frog? Well, the tape that he used to tape the frog's leg was still attached to the frog, but he was hopping, but he had this long string with the tape. So anyway, I'm trying to think now the second story I was going to tell. I can't think of what it is now. It left me. But the last time, one of the last times I saw my uncle when he came for a visit, Costco was selling these mango dried fruit, and he had brought a bag with him. And I was standing in the kitchen, and he's got the bag, and he's, munched on them, while we're cooking dinner or whatever, and he'd take another one. He goes, these are really good. I'm so glad I bought these. These are so good. And he comes out, walking up to me with the bag, and he goes, do you want one? That big smile on his face. And I said, I'm thinking, I'm not a real big fan of mango, but gosh, he wants me to taste one so bad that I'm going to do it. So I picked one out and I put it in. It was actually pretty good. And he's still standing there with the bag with this big smile on his face, and he goes, you want another one, don't ya? But when I was a baby, my parents went out to dinner, and my uncle was there, and I was making I was the oldest of the grandchildren, and so the oldest niece or nephew that he had, he was so embarrassed because I was making such a big mess. There was food everywhere on the floor, and he was like saying to my mom, can't you clean her up? This is embarrassing. Until my mom said, Daryl was born. And they went out to eat. And what did Daryl do? The same exact thing. He made a big, huge mess too. And so it's kind of like what goes around comes around. So anyway. So those are just a few fond memories that I have. He just was, whenever he'd come down to San Diego to see us, I just couldn't wait because he always had stories. He never stopped telling stories. And now I wish I would have wrote them down or videotaped them, because it was more than just stories that I would enjoy. As you could see, some of the stories that you heard from Daryl, he just was fun. So anyway, thank you for listening. So.
He was upbeat, positive. He was so willing. I never saw Warren ever have a bad day. I love that man.
I have to share how much I really enjoyed Warren's company. And I mostly, I got to know him at the fellowship luncheons, and we shared a lot of stories together. And he brought me a lot of laughs, a lot of good joy, and I'm going to miss him. I miss him already. And I think the last story we shared together was, my mother lives up in the Redwoods and loves to hike in the Redwoods, and I told him, she had a few falls and a few breaks and wrist and such, and I said, I'm designing something that is going to help her with hiking in the Redwoods. And so I proceeded to tell him about this bubble wrap suit I was going to make for her. And we just had some great laughs about that. And yeah, I'm just going to miss him. I'm going to miss him.
Well, most of my feelings about Warren obviously came out in the song that Jordan so beautifully sang. But, you know, he was just really special. I appreciated him so much as a father-in-law. You know, from the moment I entered the family, you know, he put me at ease. When I had to ask him for Cheryl's hand in marriage, he cracked jokes. It was fun. He immediately put me at ease. He was always there to help us. Whether I need brake jobs done on the car, he and I would get out there and work on the brakes together, or if we needed to move, or, you know, anything that needed done. I mean, one interesting story, he had to, when Carissa was born, he had to take Cheryl to the hospital in the snow. It was snowing that morning. I had to get down to my school and drop off lesson plans for the sub, and we, you know, I couldn't do it in time, and so he drove them through the snow to the hospital, and, you know, so much. And he never complained about anything. He was always there, always willing to help everybody, always with a smile. And so I'll just really miss him. He's a very, very special person.
Okay, do you want me to share? Okay. Hi, my name is Carissa, and I am his granddaughter. I have so many memories about my grandpa, honestly. I remember since I was like so young, like he would always like tell me like these random jokes, and he would be like, oh, I have a story. You want to hear this one? Or you want to hear this one? Like he would just always have something to say. And then like I could just be sitting like somewhere and like maybe sitting on the couch or something, and he'd be like, oh, can I tell you about the story of when I was a kid? Or can I tell you about this or that? I just remember he was so joyful. Oh my goodness. I remember he loved Andy Griffith. It was like his favorite show. He knew every single thing that happened in this episode. He's like, oh, I know this episode. Oh yeah, Barney does this and Andy does this, and oh, you want me to narrate it for you? I can tell you everything that happens. And I'm like, how do you know this? He's like, yeah, Aunt B does this, and then, oh yeah, and then there's a goat, and the goat eats dynamite, and he just had it all scripted. Like, he watched that, like, all the time. And I just have so many fond memories of my grandpa. It's kind of hard to say all of them, but some OG jokes that he would always make is he would say, do you know why my name's Warren? Because I'm worn out. Because when and then he would also make the sock joke. So whenever my family would get socks for Christmas, he would be like, it's okay, you got socks. You're improving your socks life. So if it's improving your socks life, it's going to improve you. Don't you get it? And I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and then he always had these thick eyebrows. Like, I think you can see in pictures and stuff. And, like, whenever someone would want to shave it or, like, wax them or whatever, he'd be like, you wouldn't cut the tens off a butterfly, would you now? So, I don't know, he's just, like, such an inspiring, like, grandpa. And also, I love his love for, like, old cars and vintage cars. Like, I know back when I was, like, just born, or, like, right before I was born, he was, like, he took a red truck, and it was like a 1920s, and it was a Ford, I think, and he would take it around, and people would be like, oh my gosh, your car is so cool, can I ride in it? He'd be like, no, if you ride in my car, you need to come with me on Sabbath. It's a Seventh Adventist church, and you need to come with me on Sabbath if you want to ride in my vehicle. I know, it's really cool, isn't it? And I just remember that, and it's actually helped me. It made me, like, more passionate about, like, vintage cars, to the point where I really want one. I just love his love for everything, and how, yeah, he was very positive with everything. Like, I never saw him have a down day, you know? And he always had to have something to do. And he always had these amazing ideas. He was like, oh, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get some pine cones, I'm going to spray paint them gold, and I'm going to put them on a string, and I'm going to sell them and put them around people's houses. They'll think it's really cool, you know? It's a really good business idea. You should help me with it. Or even if it was just, like, doing little activities around the yard, or, like, he loved to build stuff. Like, he wanted to build a garden, and he wanted to, like, build, like, a shack, and he had to be doing something. Like, it's almost like he couldn't stand, like, not doing something. He had to be doing something all the time. And yeah, I just say that's one of my the best fond memories I have of my grandpa. I always think of him as like a funny, joyful person who I never saw have a bad day personally. I never saw him like super sad. I always saw him as this joyful, like amazing, like enthusiastic grandpa that everyone looks up to and everyone like wishes they could, be his friend or be in his life somehow. So he just brought joy to all those around him. So yeah, that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I'm Warren Conrad's daughter, and I remember all the fun trips that he would take me to do treasure hunting with his metalocator and also gold panning. And then he'd say after we go on this trip, he'd say, "Oh, you want to go to get some ice cream, but don't tell Dorothy, because it might spoil your dinner or something." And he'd take me to ice cream, and that was just so neat. And then there was one day, I remember, he said he was coming over to our house, and took him like an hour and a half, and I couldn't figure out what happened to him. So I called him, and he says, "Oh, I'm over here changing this lady's tire. She needed it changed. I was driving by, and her car had broken down, and I thought I better help her get her tire changed." So he was just a wonderful dad. I'm going to miss him.
Well, just in case anybody thinks that Warren is in line for being sainted, in the early 80s I bought a Camaro and had 4-speed and T-tops, and I put a little stereo system in it, and of course it was a cassette player, and so I had to get some music. So headed down to Radio Shack, was looking for some other things and looking at a display case, and lo and behold, Ozzy Osbourne, Bark at the Moon. So became my purchase. So anyways, Warren was a great guy.
Hi, my name is Carissa, and I am his granddaughter, and I will be singing Shall We Gather at the River. And now I have a job for you guys. Every single time the chorus comes up, I want you to sing with me. So the chorus goes, "Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river, gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God." And I think this song was very prevalent in my grandpa's life. As you know, and as you've heard, he really liked gold panning, and he liked being near the river, and he loved nature. So I just think that, just imagine that we're in heaven for a second, and that we're by the river, and Warren is there, and maybe he's with his gold pan. I don't know. Maybe he's looking for those stones. Maybe he's like, "Oh, look at that one, and we're all singing together, because now there's no more pain, there's no more suffering, there's no more death, and now we're in eternity together. So remember, chorus, guys. Okay. Shall we gather at the river, where bright angel feet have trod, with its crystal tide forever flowing by the throne of God? Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the reach the shining river. Soon our pilgrimage will cease. Soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. Once more. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God.
After the closing prayer, if you would all find your way across the porte-cochere there to the fellowship hall, there'll be some light refreshments, and the family will join you there shortly. If you'd bow your heads. Dear Father in heaven, we're so thankful that we have hope. We have hope of being reunited in a place that's perfect and it's forever. And so we just hang on to that now during this time of loss. Thank you for the memories that give us courage and bring a smile to our face. And we just look forward to making many more for all of eternity. So may you come home and to come back and take us home very soon. We pray all these things in your name. Amen.